Chapter 32. Privacy is not an option, and it shouldn't be the price we accept for just getting on the internet. Gary Kovacs. I stopped at a public phone booth up the road a bit. A beachcomber looking guy who was in the car park rolled along on his pushy after me. As I opened my door, I pretended I was going to hit him with it, pulling it back at the last minute. That was violent enough for me. Nothing I could be accused of. He swerved and swore and righted it again, no doubt as adrenaline filled as me. Sucked in, motherfucker. The public phone didn't take coins. I needed a phone card. Jesus, I hadn't bought one of these since I was in high school. Where to get one? I found a news agency up the road. They also had paper maps. I needed one to get to Armidale and beyond. I was going ahead to the nearest bigger centre, north along the highway. As I drove in that direction, drivers battled to get in close to me. It was so obvious. I pulled out in front of a tradie in a ute to scare the fuck out of him. I wanted people to back off. It was reckless, but my state of mind was not good. Despite this, I still contemplated how this whole game was so dangerous to so-called innocents. They were doing dangerous driving just to earn cash. The super dorks had absolutely no qualms about this. I guess if there'd been an accident, it wouldn't be tied to them. I was almost wishing there was an accident, though. Something had to stop these people. Along the drive, I remembered that the oaf I'd worked with in the Beachtown courier job lived in the town I was going to. He would have been at work in Beachtown, but the off chance that he was there was horrifying to me. My worst enemy seeing me in this situation would have been a wet dream to them. I thought some more about him, the bitch who managed the warehouse and the little incel who drove a van like me. They acted sus. I wouldn't be surprised if they'd been accessing IBA footage of me. Every morning the oaf would sing that police song. Every breath you take, I'll be watching you. If that wasn't a hint, I don't know what was. It was lucky that I ignored it, really. But that would have been why they felt so free to bully me. They probably would have told the bosses that I said porn to the oaf and the incel. So that's where all this shit started. It was ancient history now, but it made sense. I took a big U-E where I could, sucked into all the people heading my way on the highway. I was out of there. Now I just had to deal with all the ones on my side of the highway. An old man and woman drove past me. The woman was waving the phone around under the old man's nose. Is this how you do it, dear? I don't know if I'm hitting the right button. Oh, how sweet. They were making extra cash. I hoped it affected their pension. Oh, fuckers. I started to head to a town called Taree. On the way there was a small pull-in. It was just a side road that couldn't fit many cars parked in it. One of those ones with the next town's tourist signs in it. I parked up the end, opened the door, sat and smoked and thought and thought. I was so exhausted as I half sat, half laid, staring out at the tree and shrub-covered embankment. The traffic had been physically draining me. They were bloodsuckers, parasites. It came into my head that they were zombies and I was actually in another dimension. This isn't real. Humans wouldn't do this to me. I started to plead my case to anyone who'd listen, to let me out of it. Yes, it was madness, but I was desperate. Something else had been plaguing me, and I kept putting it to the back of my mind. I couldn't contact my real estate people in Melbourne to update my details. The office number kept going to voicemail. No one was answering my calls. No one was answering my emails. I was terrified that something dodgy was going on. Maybe the super dorks had worked out how to sell my apartment from under my feet and were using the profits to pay everyone else out. And the zombies were loving it. A solo woman who hadn't worked for her assets, well, I had, in being cut out of my family business even though I'd worked for it when I was younger. And now everyone else was able to steal it out from under her and get away with it, giving joy to joyless lives. That money would run out pretty quickly at the rate of people tucking into it, though. It wasn't even $1 million. But the idea was in my head. I'd have no asset to live off, so I was screwed anyway. So I tried to bargain with Billy. I knew she wouldn't want to help me. But since they did want me dead, then send the fucking gangsters. I wouldn't hurt them, I'd just wave a machete around. They'd take off and then the cops would come. I wouldn't drop my weapon and they'd have no choice but to shoot me. Those cunts were responsible for me being in this situation in the first place. They didn't protect me. They didn't protect any of us. One woman killed a week. We can't do anything to males until they do something to us first. The system is broken and wants to see every last one of us women terrified of males and living small. So I had no guilty conscience about making a pig have to shoot me. I wasn't going to pull a machete out on innocent people, though. Well, they weren't innocent. They were all parasitic zombies. It'd be a bad look if I did. So I begged Billy to send gangsters. I was all geared up to attack these pricks. I'd had enough. For some reason, I went calm. I know that feeling. It's not for good reasons. It's the calm you feel when you know there's an out to your pain. It's exquisite, really. Because I was now calm, I tried a different tactic. I told Billy that I was in love with her, and she me. She just didn't know it yet. I went on and on in my head. We're in love. You've got to help me. All this shit to bring the gangsters to try and kidnap me and end this. I was actually feeling the love. I wouldn't have to act on it, so it wasn't a bargain in the real world. I wanted her to help me die a dignified death. I was ready to leave the planet. And I was convincing her that after I was gone, she could start the resistance and she'd be a hero. Tell everyone what's going on. In the next planetary life, she'd be a hero there too, for she would be part of the resistance that she'd tried to bring about on Earth. I was going to sacrifice myself for the good of others, and she could speed this sacrifice up, then take this whole thing to whoever could help her shine a light on the ghastly experiment. Never mind that I knew deep down that Billy was too much of a coward to do this, and too much of a narcissist to risk her life by going whistleblower. She'd claim that she'd done this in the public service. I doubt she'd do this to criminal dorks, though. They have money to burn, to end people. Of course I didn't hear her reply. So I asked her what I could do to end it. She came back with, "Why don't you jump in front of the traffic with the machete? The cops will probably come and shoot you." The message was casually spoken, no emphasis or drama, because she didn't care what happened to me. I flipped a coin and it came back yes. I was doing this. The walk down to the highway from my van was so long. It was less than 100 meters, but it was just me, my machete, and the road. I was Mad Max, or Psycho Maxine, if you will. I didn't care if I caused a car accident. The road was absolutely teeming with few breaks in it. While I'd stopped in the rest stop, people somehow managed to slow down and go into it also. There was always a car in there. Right now it was empty though. A truck had managed to squeeze itself into the rest stop, despite it not being long enough to slow down in. While it was in there, other trucks had beeped at him. Over the radio, they would have been saying, "Good for you, mate. Get that little Pokemon cunt." I stepped out into the lane when I saw a break, waving the machete over my head. People swerved out of my way. It was safe to swerve as there was an extra lane turning right, so no one was going to crash. They just would have felt terror. Good. These zombies had to pay. People had to stop playing the game. They had to realize that there was a human being persecuted by this. Trucks found it the hardest to slow down and swerve, but too bad. Truckies were the worst offenders in my mind. A prime mover was coming towards me. He didn't swerve. He had enough room to pull up in front of me. I wasn't game to throw myself into the path of a truck and kill myself. That would have been too easy for the super dorks. I was going to get cops involved if it was the last thing I did. And it was going to be the last thing I did. A chubby young bogan with speed dealer reflector sunnies was driving this truck. As I walked towards him, he backed up. It was hard to back up, and he put his trailer over into the lane beside him. This meant that people could still get around him, but they couldn't come into my lane. This was a safety measure, really, for me, but I saw it as him being scared of me. The feeling really egged me on. I walked forward, brandishing the machete and shouting at him. I was high on the fear that showed up in his face. I could see it from my position down on the ground, and I loved it. I yelled, "I should be driving that fucking truck, but these bastards stopped me from working. And that's right, motherfucker, be scared." He got on his radio to warn other trucks up the highway. Cars and trucks continued to drive around him. He got on his phone. I was yelling at him to call the cops. They were taking a long time, and I was sus that they were being briefed not to kill me. I was precious cargo. I continued to yell and slap my machete against my hand. It started to bleed a little, not too bad. I needed to walk around and yell and maintain my energy. It was so hard, so hot. I was sweating like a pig. 3 males had stopped in the rest stop and were watching me from a distance. They weren't game to come down, but I had an eye on them in case one of them snuck up behind me. At one stage there, I yelled at the truckie, "I don't want to hurt you." It was true. If he'd gotten out and tried to disarm me, that's a different story. None of those males in the rest stop were game to disarm me. I must have looked like a psycho. But there was absolutely no way I was going to get to him in his truck. It was locked tight. People in cars stared as they went past. Some young incel males laughed at me and I yelled at them. One older woman driving solo gave me the thumbs up as she passed. I took this as support that she didn't agree with the game. I started yelling, "See? She gets it." A Tesla went by with a 30-plus tech bro in it. He got a serve for me too and looked worried. I was enjoying this in a way, but I also felt like a fool who'd lost it. The fact that people laughed at me goes to show that it's not worth losing your shit about the fucked up society that we live in. I was realizing this, but the cops weren't coming to end it. I even sat down on the ground for a rest. Little me, a ball on the ground, facing up to a Kenworth or Mack truck and the whole M1 on a Tuesday afternoon. I didn't feel like I was out of my body. I felt like I was in it and I was doing everything that needed to be done. I was holding their siege together like a champion. And then I heard them, the cops. About 3 or 4 uniform, a woman in plain clothes who was probably a D. She called out, "What can we do for you, darling?" This was the kind of service I wanted, but what the hell of a way to have to get it. I'm sure if I'd have come in and told my story, I'd be getting no darlings. I screamed out, "You don't protect us. You don't protect me." A uniformed red-headed copper started coming towards me. "What do you want from us?" he called. This was my moment. "I want you to kill me." I started running towards him, machete up. He drew out his taser and started inching forward towards me. I screamed, "No, I don't want the taser." I then started running in circles away from him but back towards the other coppers. An older copper with a beard was the shooter. The taser cop was right up on me now. He shot at me. Those prongs went into me, but I just pulled them out. Nothing was going to drop me except that older copper. I saw him hold his hand over his pistol ready to draw. I held my hand up and let the machete dangle from the wrist guard that strapped it to my hand. I was yelling out, "I'm not going to drop it," taunting the pistol copper. I weaved and ducked another taser shot that landed. It hit my bare shoulder and again I just pulled it out. I'm yet to feel what an actual taser electric shock feels like. I was going to make this fucking thing happen if it killed me. That was the plan. Suddenly I felt 2 arms around my shoulders and I was pitching forward onto the ground. I screamed the most guttural "No" I've ever screamed in my life, even louder than when I came off my motorcycle once. As I bucked and bucked on the ground, it took all of them to subdue me. A D that I hadn't noticed before had crash tackled me. "I want to die. No." They were all shouting instructions at each other. "Hold her legs. Get the fucking machete." No one got the machete. My adrenaline-filled body was causing them too much trouble. Little 60-kilogram me was like a full-bodied man. I dropped the machete out of my wrist guard, all of my own volition. Another yelled, "Put her head on the ground." No one did, so I stuck my own head down on the burning bitumen. They'd cuffed me in cuffs that weren't chained. They were more like stocks. Luckily, they all helped to lift me up because it would have hurt to be dragged to my feet in those things. I wasn't yelling anymore. I was saying in a cool, calm voice, "Have you all seen that app that tracks me?" They all fell silent, not knowing what to say. In my mind, these seemed an admission of guilt. I was also yakking away about the highway patrol cop being corrupt. One of them said, "There's no corrupt cops." It didn't deter me. I went on about how it was probably that bloke's brother-in-law or some shit. I saw what I saw. Predictably, there'd be no point telling them. Even if I'd chosen a more sane way to express myself, there'd be no fucking point telling them. The D woman was back to calling me darling. They wanted my name, but I didn't give it to him. They wanted my name, but I didn't give it to them. They asked if that was my van and if there were any other weapons in there. I just said kitchen knives, nothing else. They also asked if there was a pet in there. I was answering all the questions right, except my name. I didn't want to give my name. That was weird, but it turned out to be a sensible move later. A voice came into my head. People are going to treat you differently now. I shushed it away. I was really on top of the world, truth be told. I was pissed off that I wasn't dead, but I was proud that I didn't get dropped by a taser. I felt tough as hell. They loaded me into the paddy wagon and debriefed outside. There was a cheekiness to me, an insolence. That was like it wasn't me. I started to sing. I'm going home in the back of a paddy van. Bang, 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 hitting the stocks on the plastic floor in time to the beat. One of them checked on me and I got my first sight of the D who'd crash tackled me. He looked mean. I had the strongest feeling that he knew the whole story of me, but they weren't going to offer to help, so I wasn't going to say shit. I figured the debrief was him telling them about the human experiment. Eventually, two officers got in and started driving. I figured I'd be going to Beach Town. They went north. I was on the way to Taree. I was fighting with my confidence, trying to stay in the happy, crazy chemicals that were surging around my body, around my brain. Something was telling me that I'd imagined everything and this was reality hitting me. I didn't pay any thoughts, any mind, just vibed on the free drugs that my body was producing and protecting me with.